"You're not like anyone I've ever known," Ethan whispered to the storm as his boots crunched across the crimson dust, each step sending sparks from his suit scraping the jagged rocks. The sky above tore itself apart in streaks of electric blue and red, a plasma storm bending the horizon, and he tightened his grip on the comm panel, listening to the hum of damaged machinery. In the shadows, a figure shifted, the glint of fractured armor catching the flickering light, skin shimmering a pale, metallic turquoise. Lyra Th's eyes, wide and wary, followed Ethan's every movement as he knelt, assessing the situation with calm, meticulous hands. He adjusted a broken sensor, the clicks echoing through the cavernous debris field, then reached for a tattered containment sheet, offering it without a word. The alien tilted her head, curiosity and caution warring within her gaze, as if measuring the intent behind his actions. Ethan moved slowly, deliberately, letting the glow of the storm reveal their proximity without rushing, and Lyra flinched only once before allowing him to help reposition the fragments of her armor that pinched and snagged on the rocks. A low hum filled the air, the rhythm of their breathing syncing with the pulses of energy flashing across the horizon. He handed her a small canister of purified water, tilting it just enough for her to drink without speaking. And for the first time, Lyra gaze softened, a fleeting acknowledgement of trust forming between worlds. Sparks from a nearby power conduit arced in the background, bathing their faces in alternating gold and azure light, highlighting the contrast of human skin against alien iridescence. Ethan's eyes didn't leave hers. The air felt thick, heavy with unsaid words, the potential of understanding hanging like charged particles around them. He adjusted a strap, the fabric brushing lightly against the cool metallic sheen of her forearm, an imperceptible gesture that conveyed care rather than possession, and Lyra exhaled, a sound caught between relief and disbelief. Behind them, the storm's intensity crested, the ground vibrating with distant booms that sent microshocks through the jagged metal, yet neither flinched. A moment of fragile equilibrium held them in place. The alien reached out, tentatively touching a control panel Ethan had been studying, fingers brushing over worn symbols that sparked recognition without explanation, and he nodded almost imperceptibly, sharing the language of action rather than words. Light danced across their faces as he guided her to a more stable perch, each movement measured, precise, and devoid of any expectation beyond mutual survival. Above them, the plasma flares painted streaks across the sky, framing their small figures against the vast expanse, and Ethan spoke again, his voice low and intimate. "We'll make it through this, together." A promise neither fully understood, yet both felt deeply. Lyra Th's eyes lingered on him, her expression unreadable but softened, the glint of the storm reflecting the first spark of recognition that humanity's simple courage could mirror the strength she had long known only in herself. The tension of the universe around them contrasted with the delicate thread they had woven, a quiet bond in the chaos, leaving the story suspended at the edge of revelation, a single breath before the larger journey unfolds. The storm had eased into a steady hum, casting long shadows across the jagged terrain as Ethan and Lyra navigated the fractured landscape. Dust and light mixed into a hazy glow that outlined their forms, his white suit marked by scuffs and scratches, her metallic teal skin catching every flicker of the dying plasma. Ethan moved carefully, scanning the horizon for a safe passage while Lyra observed him, her gaze sharp yet softened by curiosity. She mimicked the rhythm of his steps, each footfall deliberate, learning a language of movement rather than words. He paused near a ridge, pointing to a narrow crevice where the ground was stable, and gestured for her to follow. The alien hesitated, then stepped forward, her motions precise, almost ceremonial, as if acknowledging the trust he had shown. The air between them vibrated with unspoken understanding, a quiet bridge forming over the chasm of difference. Ethan set down a small device, its sensors flickering to life, and adjusted it with careful hands, the lights pulsing gently, illuminating the intricate patterns of her armor fragments. She leaned closer, her glowing eyes reflecting the device, curiosity softening the caution that had gripped her since the crash. Together, they studied the readings, the alien tracing the lines with a fingertip and he mirrored her attention, nodding in approval. Time slowed around them. The storm that had threatened to consume everything now seemed like a distant memory, replaced by a focus on survival and understanding. Ethan offered a compact energy pack, demonstrating its use, and Lyra took it with a tentative nod, the simple act of sharing becoming a silent affirmation of cooperation. Shadows lengthened as the twin suns began to set, painting the rocks in deep crimson and gold, and they found a shallow alcove to rest, the sounds of the distant landscape hushed. She sat with her knees drawn close, the glint of her eyes catching every color shift, while Ethan unpacked a small portable light, the glow softening the harsh edges of the alien figure beside him. They spoke little, but each gesture, each glance, conveyed reassurance, the fragile trust deepening with each quiet interaction. Lyra finally allowed a small, almost imperceptible smile to break through, the first hint of warmth in her eyes, and Ethan responded with a gentle nod, acknowledging the step forward without words. Night crept across the sky, stars reflected in her metallic skin, a silent tapestry of shared endurance and tentative connection, leaving the promise of further discovery hanging in the cool, electrified air around them. The night air settled over the jagged ridges as Ethan and Lyra moved with deliberate care, the soft glow of a portable light casting long, shifting shadows across the metallic landscape. The remnants of the plasma storm reflected faintly in her iridescent skin, highlighting contours and patterns that seemed to shift with each subtle movement. Ethan adjusted a sensor, its gentle hum blending with the whisper of wind around them, and Lyra watched, her gaze curious yet measured, learning the cadence of human patience. He handed her a small navigation device, its screen flickering with topographical lines, and she traced the patterns with a slender finger, the gesture tentative yet precise, almost ceremonial. A distant ridge glimmered with the residual energy from the storm, and Ethan suggested a path around it, pointing with careful precision, his movements calm and deliberate. Lyra nodded, following his lead, each step synchronized with his own as though the terrain demanded harmony more than speed. They paused at a narrow ledge overlooking a valley of fractured rock, the ambient light painting their forms in muted gold and teal. Ethan crouched to examine the ground, shifting small stones and adjusting his footing, and Lyra mirrored the motion, the alien grace of her movements contrasting with his human pragmatism yet forming a seamless rhythm. He offered a small hydration pack, demonstrating its use, and she accepted it, the simple exchange deepening an unspoken bond. Above them, faint stars began to prick the darkening sky, their light reflected in her metallic skin, and Ethan pointed out constellations, his voice soft, almost reverent, explaining the human stories tied to each formation. Lyra tilted her head, absorbing not only the information but the intent, the human desire to find meaning in the vastness surrounding them. They moved together through the broken terrain, occasionally stopping to adjust equipment or assist one another across difficult footing, a silent communication growing stronger with each interaction. The air was filled with the subtle hum of energy from the storm's aftermath, the scent of ozone mixing with the dry metallic dust, creating an atmosphere that felt both alien and intimate. At a small alcove, they settled briefly, the faint glow of their devices illuminating their faces as they shared a quiet moment of observation and reflection, understanding forming not through words but through action, through presence, and through the steady, patient acknowledgement of each other's strengths and vulnerabilities. As the night deepened, their figures framed against the horizon, Ethan felt the weight of trust established, and Lyra sensed a newfound understanding of human resilience and kindness, leaving both suspended on the edge of anticipation for the next chapter of their journey. The first rays of the twin suns filtered through the jagged peaks, casting long streaks of golden light across the fractured landscape. Ethan adjusted his gear, the soft hum of his portable devices blending with the whisper of wind that carried the scent of ozone and metallic dust. Lyra stepped carefully beside him, each movement deliberate, the glow of her skin catching the light in a gentle, almost iridescent shimmer. They reached a shallow valley where remnants of the storm lay scattered in jagged patterns, and Ethan pointed out a cluster of stable rock formations that could serve as a temporary shelter. She nodded, tilting her head slightly, eyes tracking his movements, absorbing the rhythm of his gestures, learning the unspoken cues of human logic and care. Together, they navigated through narrow pathways, the light reflecting off her fractured armor in muted flashes, creating a dance of color against the darkened terrain. Ethan crouched to examine a patch of smooth rock, testing its stability with careful taps, and Lyratich mirrored his actions, matching his attentiveness and precision. A gentle breeze swept through, carrying tiny particles that sparkled like stars in the sunlight, and Ethan gestured for her to pause and watch, sharing a small, human ritual of observation and respect for their surroundings. They settled near a natural alcove, the ground even and safe, and Ethan unpacked a small kit of essentials, arranging them with meticulous care. Lyra crouched nearby, observing, her eyes reflecting faint streaks of sunlight as she studied the tools and their function. He demonstrated how to use a compact water purifier, and she followed suit, her motions careful, deliberate, a silent acknowledgement of his guidance. They worked side by side in quiet harmony, each action reinforcing trust, each glance carrying unspoken understanding. The landscape around them shifted subtly as the light changed, and Ethan pointed out distant features, describing their function in human terms, while Lyra absorbed not just the information but the intent behind it. As the suns climbed higher, shadows moved and stretched, painting their forms with a soft, interlacing pattern of gold and teal, highlighting the growing connection between them. Ethan offered a small ration pack, demonstrating how to open and share it, and she accepted with a nod, the gesture simple yet profound, a bridge across their differences. The air vibrated faintly with residual energy from the storm, yet the moment between them remained calm and steady, a fragile equilibrium born of shared purpose and emerging respect. They settled in the alcove, side by side, sharing a quiet silence filled with observation and subtle interaction, leaving the promise of deeper understanding hanging between them as the alien landscape stretched endlessly beyond, both aware of the journey still to come and the connection quietly forming in its midst. The morning light filtered through the jagged rocks, scattering streaks of gold and copper across the uneven ground. Ethan adjusted his pack, its weight familiar and grounding, while Lyratich moved beside him with careful precision, her teal skin shimmering softly under the rising suns. They approached a narrow canyon where shadows pooled between steep walls, and Ethan crouched to examine the stability of a ledge, pointing out subtle fractures with a steady hand. She mirrored his movements, cautious but deliberate, her eyes scanning for details he might miss, each gesture a silent acknowledgement of trust. The wind whispered through the canyon, carrying faint particles of dust that sparkled in the light, and Ethan demonstrated the use of a small mapping device, tracing the contours of the path ahead while Lyra followed, absorbing the information and copying his method. They paused atop a ridge, overlooking a valley shaped by the storm, the colors shifting from crimson to muted bronze as the suns climbed higher. Ethan offered a portable hydration unit, showing how to operate it, and she accepted with a tentative nod, the simple exchange deepening their quiet bond. He pointed out distant formations, describing them in measured tones, emphasizing landmarks and safe paths, while she leaned closer, her attention sharp and focused, learning the human approach to navigation and caution. Their shadows stretched long and intertwined on the rock beneath them, and in the silence between words, a shared rhythm emerged, the unspoken understanding of two beings from different worlds working in harmony. Ethan adjusted the small light on his pack, casting soft illumination on her armor fragments, and she allowed her gaze to linger on the patterns, noting the subtle imperfections and the care taken to maintain them. They continued forward, stepping over uneven ground, pausing to assist one another across precarious footing, their movements synchronized without a word spoken. The ambient hum of residual storm energy filled the air, subtle and constant, and the alien landscape stretched endlessly beyond them, painting a backdrop of both challenge and beauty. At a shallow alcove, they rested briefly, sharing a calm moment of observation, Ethan demonstrating a simple task with a tool, and Lyratich following suit, each action a quiet affirmation of cooperation and growing understanding. As the suns reached their zenith, the interplay of light and shadow emphasized the contrasts and similarities between them, and in that shared space, a delicate trust took root, leaving both aware that the journey ahead was as much about understanding each other as navigating the world around them. The canyon narrowed as Ethan and Lyratich carefully descended, the walls rising high on either side and filtering the sunlight into sharp, angled beams. Dust motes drifted lazily through the light, catching on the edges of her armor fragments and illuminating the subtle turquoise shimmer of her skin. Ethan paused to inspect a small ledge, brushing away loose gravel and testing its firmness with the sole of his boot, and she mirrored his action, her movements deliberate, each gesture a reflection of learned trust. He adjusted a compact device, its soft glow scanning the terrain ahead, and Lyratich leaned closer, her attention focused, following the rhythm of his work with precise interest. A gentle wind stirred, carrying the faint scent of ionized air and the lingering traces of the storm, and Ethan gestured to a patch of smoother rock below, indicating the path to safer ground. She nodded, stepping carefully, her footsteps deliberate, each one echoing lightly against the canyon walls. They paused to observe the subtle play of shadows as the sunlight shifted, Ethan pointing out safe footholds and hidden irregularities in the rock surface, while Lyratich absorbed each detail, internalizing human methods of caution and observation. The canyon narrowed further, creating a small alcove bathed in soft golden light, and Ethan set down his pack, demonstrating the use of a simple water purification tool. Lyratich watched intently, her glowing eyes reflecting the device's light, then carefully replicated the motion, a silent affirmation of understanding. The moment stretched, quiet but full of mutual recognition, as the sun continued to climb, painting the canyon walls with warm tones that danced across their forms. Ethan traced the contours of the rocks with his fingers, noting points of interest and potential hazards, and Lyratich followed suit, her movements echoing his attention to detail. A small breeze shifted, rustling loose particles across the ground, and he offered her a compact ration pack, which she took after a brief pause, the simple gesture deepening the fragile bond forming between them. Shadows lengthened, creating intricate patterns on the canyon floor, and the interplay of light highlighted the contrasts between his human presence and her alien form while emphasizing the harmony of their coordinated movements. Together, they advanced slowly, pausing to assist one another across uneven terrain, the quiet rhythm of shared focus building an unspoken language of cooperation. The residual hum of energy from the storm lingered faintly in the air, a subtle reminder of the power surrounding them. Yet the calm between Ethan and Lyratich remained steady, a testament to the trust cultivated through careful observation, patience, and mutual respect as the canyon opened gradually to reveal the broader landscape beyond, promising further challenges and discoveries that they would face side by side. The terrain ahead opened into a wide plateau, bathed in the soft light of the setting suns, the shadows of jagged rocks stretching long and thin across the metallic dust. Ethan paused to recalibrate his navigation device, the faint hum of its sensors mingling with the whisper of wind moving through narrow crevices. Lyratich approached cautiously, her teal skin reflecting the golden hues, each step measured and precise, showing a careful balance of trust and instinct. A sudden shift in the ground beneath a loose ridge caught Ethan's attention, and he extended a steady hand to guide her across the unstable patch, his motion deliberate and reassuring. She hesitated for a moment, then followed, mirroring his careful rhythm, the subtle act of cooperation bridging the distance between their worlds. Ahead, a natural alcove provided temporary shelter, and Ethan motioned for Lyratich to take position beside him, adjusting a small portable light to illuminate the immediate area. The light danced across her armor fragments, highlighting intricate patterns that shimmered with soft turquoise and metallic reflections. He demonstrated the function of a compact device to analyze residual energy in the area, his hands precise and methodical, and she observed intently, her fingers tracing along the contours of the equipment, learning through action rather than words. The plateau was quiet except for the faint hum of the sensors and the occasional gust of wind, creating a rhythm that seemed to synchronize their movements. Ethan offered her a small hydration pack, showing the method to access the filtered water, and she accepted with a careful nod, her trust in his guidance deepening through the simple gesture. Light shifted subtly as the suns dipped lower, painting the rocks in warm amber and copper tones, and Ethan pointed out distant features that could serve as markers for safe navigation, while Lyra studied them, absorbing not only the information but the human approach to careful observation and caution. They continued their progress across the plateau, pausing to assist one another over uneven ground, a delicate choreography of shared focus and mutual understanding. The atmosphere around them carried the faint residual energy from the earlier storm, a subtle reminder of the environment's volatility, yet the calm between them remained steadfast. As the plateau opened toward a larger expanse, Ethan and Lyra stood side by side, the interplay of light and shadow reflecting both their differences and the emerging harmony in their cooperation. A gentle breeze shifted the particles of dust around them, and in that suspended moment, both recognized the quiet strength of patience, trust, and shared resilience, a silent prelude to the greater journey that lay ahead beyond the horizon. The suns dipped low behind distant ridges, casting long, warm streaks across the plateau, and Ethan adjusted his pack, while Lyra studied the subtle reflections on the fractured armor of her forearm. The landscape stretched out endlessly, undulating with jagged rocks and glimmering dust caught in the fading light. Ethan paused at the edge of a shallow gorge, examining the uneven ground with careful attention, and gestured for Lyra to follow his lead. She hesitated for a heartbeat, then stepped with deliberate care, her movements fluid yet precise, a silent acknowledgement of his guidance. The ambient hum of residual energy from the storm lingered in the air, soft but persistent, adding a subtle vibration beneath their feet. Ethan retrieved a compact energy scanner, its soft glow illuminating patterns on the ground that revealed hidden shifts in the terrain, and Lyra leaned closer, her gaze focused, absorbing the data with meticulous attention. Together, they navigated a narrow path along the edge of the gorge, their steps synchronized without a word, the rhythm of their movements forming a quiet language of trust. He handed her a small hydration unit, demonstrating its operation, and she accepted, following the motion exactly, their actions speaking louder than any conversation could. The light shifted as the sun sank lower, painting the rocks in amber and teal, highlighting the contrasts and subtle harmonies between their forms. Ethan pointed to distant landmarks, suggesting routes to safer ground, and she observed, committing each detail to memory, her mind translating human method into alien comprehension. They paused atop a small rise, the wind carrying particles of dust that glittered in the soft light, and Ethan gestured to survey the horizon, his eyes meeting hers for a brief moment, a quiet affirmation of the partnership that had grown from necessity into understanding. Lyra allowed herself a small, almost imperceptible nod, the first open acknowledgement of her appreciation for human patience and subtle care. They continued along the plateau, occasionally assisting one another over precarious footing, each act reinforcing the bond of shared reliance. As twilight approached, the colors of the sky deepened, reflecting off her skin in shimmering patterns, and Ethan adjusted the light on his pack to illuminate the immediate terrain, casting soft, moving shadows that danced across her metallic contours. They settled in a small alcove, the subtle vibration of residual energy continuing around them, yet the calm between them remained, a testament to the trust built through careful observation, deliberate action, and mutual respect. In that quiet moment, Lyra finally allowed a subtle warmth to touch her expression, and Ethan recognized it, the silent connection between human and alien growing stronger, leaving both aware that the journey ahead would test not only their skill but the fragile understanding they had forged together. The plateau opened fully beneath the fading light of the suns, the horizon stretching endlessly as Ethan and Lyra stood side by side, surveying the landscape they had traversed together. The subtle hum of residual storm energy still lingered in the air, a gentle vibration that blended with the whisper of the wind across jagged rocks and scattered metallic dust. Ethan adjusted his portable light, casting a soft glow that illuminated her turquoise skin and fractured armor, highlighting the intricate patterns that shimmered faintly in the dimming light. Lyra tilted her head, observing him with careful focus, and for the first time, she allowed herself a relaxed posture, a subtle acknowledgement of the trust that had grown between them. Ethan pointed toward distant ridges, describing safe paths and potential resting points with measured, deliberate gestures, and she followed, her gaze absorbing not only the direction but the care behind his actions. Together, they descended into a shallow valley, stepping over uneven terrain with synchronized precision, each pause and adjustment reinforcing the silent language of cooperation that had formed between them. He offered her a compact hydration pack, demonstrating the operation slowly and methodically, and she mirrored his actions exactly, their motions flowing together in quiet harmony. The suns dipped below the horizon, and the plateau was bathed in deep amber and soft teal, shadows stretching and blending across the jagged terrain, painting both human and alien forms with light and depth. Ethan motioned toward a stable alcove where they could rest, and Lyra stepped forward, her movements careful and deliberate, allowing herself to rely on his guidance without hesitation. They settled near a cluster of smooth stones, side by side, the subtle interplay of light on their forms creating a visual reflection of the bond forged through hours of observation, shared care, and patient understanding. The faint rustle of dust in the wind and the soft hum of residual energy provided a backdrop for a quiet exchange of glances, each one conveying trust and mutual recognition more powerfully than words could. Lyra reached out, almost imperceptibly, to adjust a piece of her fractured armor, and Ethan offered a steadying hand, a silent gesture of support that she accepted with a brief nod. As twilight deepened, the stars began to prick the darkening sky, their light reflecting off her iridescent skin in patterns that shifted with every subtle movement, and Ethan watched, noting the quiet strength of patience, resilience, and understanding that had emerged between them. In that suspended moment, the vastness of the plateau and the remnants of the storm around them seemed to fade, leaving only the fragile yet profound connection between human and alien, a silent testament to trust, courage, and the quiet power of shared experience that promised more discoveries and challenges just beyond the horizon.